Welcome to Home Health 360, a podcast presented by Alleviate. I'm your host, Jeff Howell, and this is the show about learning from the best in home health care from around the globe.
Welcome, friends, to another episode of Home Health 360, where we chat with leaders from around the globe on all things home health and home care. I'm your guest host, Erin Villier, U.S. Director of Sales for Alleviate Software, and today I am joined by one of Alleviate's trusted partners, Mike McSherry, the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Hierology. Hierology powers hiring and talent management for thousands of home care and home health professionals across North America. Mike has a decade of experience in human capital strategy, including work ranging from enterprise corporations to high-growth startups. He holds a BA from Indiana University and a JD from Chicago-Kent College of Law. A native Chicagoan, Mike currently resides in Austin, Texas, with his wife and his dog. Thank you so much for joining me today, Mike.
Hey, Erin. Pleasure's all mine, and always fun to team up with our great partners over at Alleviate. So glad to be here.
Absolutely. And we have a very relevant topic to discuss today.
Oh, yeah.
And I am super excited that our listeners are going to be able to walk away with some actionable insights for how we can potentially combat this recruitment and retention problem. But before we hop into the topic, I would love if you can share with the audience how you got into this space of recruitment and retention and what makes you so excited about it.
Well, thanks for asking. A lot of times in these presentations, it's just about the company. Nobody wants to know the guest. So I have a bit of a unique career path myself and background on how I got into this position. But my passion for recruitment and the retention themes and just HR in general, Erin, date back to my time as a labor and employment lawyer. So out of college, I went to law school, and then out of law school, I practiced at a big firm in Chicago for several years, representing companies in all sorts of labor and employment disputes, issues, even litigation. And, back in those days, a lot of the problems that arose for employers we represented and their staff, it really came down to problematic employees that shouldn't have been hired in the first place. And that was always an area that I thought it was just so vexing for HR, management, owners of companies, because they knew that that person should have been hired. But oftentimes these businesses, and we represented a lot of smaller businesses too, they didn't have a process in place. They couldn't point to one place or another where they realized, oh yeah, we took a misstep. It was always, we wish we'd never hired them in the first place. They never were a good performer. And of course, those are the ones that always cause problems and that ended up with them having to contact their attorneys. Conversely, there were a lot of other problems that I saw in those early days as an attorney where the problems arose from someone leaving. It was actually quite talented. And it was the employer, they just failed to do what they had to do or needed to do to hang on to that talent. So long story short, just kind of always, been around the HR space, and it started from the legal lens. But every day I was always scratching my head wondering, how do these people get hired? How do businesses not take their recruiting and hiring process more seriously? Because it's just one of those areas with so many pitfalls during the process. And then, of course, if you screw up, or I shouldn't say screw up, but if you make a mistake, the cows can really come home to pasture down the line with a bad person in the wrong seat.
Indeed. Well, it sounds like your past experience has definitely primed you for massive success in this space. You've brought with you a unique perspective. You've probably seen it all.
That's it. Yeah, the perspective, once I got into the software side of things, I started in sales. And of course, now I've matriculated into the partnership side. But it did give me that perspective, especially being able to empathize with the folks who use Hierology's product are typically HR directors or their managers, and many times, and in this industry, they're owners and operators of a business. And I feel for them, knowing what it's like to be in their seat. It can be pretty lonely and very stressful. So I think having that experience of what they have to deal with from a labor and employment counseling standpoint, employee relations, all that stuff, when I talk about software and how it can help, it makes the conversation that much more impactful and relatable.
Indeed. Being empathetic is super powerful when you're trying to relate to people, and especially the home care and home health industry right now, because the demands on the home care industry have not subsided, not even a little bit, since everything peaked during COVID. In fact, I think more and more people are wanting care in the home, and that's a trend that's going to continue. I'm curious if you have seen any trends emerge with home care agencies in their hiring practices so that they can maintain their current census and service levels and potentially grow, because everybody wants to grow, right?
Yeah, we 100% have, Aaron. I think to your point about coming out of COVID, more families and individuals in America, when it comes to care, realized I don't have to go to a facility. I can actually get a lot of this for myself or for a loved one administered at the home. So as we saw that demand increase, and obviously you have the growing baby boomer population that's needing these types of services, with the demand increasing meant, okay, we need to hire more people. So one of the trends we've seen escalate in the last year and a half is really speed. We call it at Hierology hiring velocity. It's really that time it takes, Aaron, from someone applying for a job to the moment they've accepted it and been hired. That has been compressed dramatically. And it's not just in the home care space. It's really any industry in America. Coming out of the pandemic, everybody was ramped and raring to go with hiring and rehiring staff. So it created this dilemma where there were more open jobs in the country than there was talent available. And because of that shortage, you have to be fast. So we saw the average time to hire across a number of industries, and home care especially, cut in half. From roughly, it used to take maybe several weeks to hire and place a caregiver. Now we're seeing on average 14 days or less. So that's one really big trend that's continued to accelerate, and we don't anticipate the hiring speed is going to slow down anytime soon. And I'd say the other trend is that agencies are starting to realize that it's not all about quality when it comes to applicants. Caregiver applicants used to be a dime a dozen, not so anymore for the same issues and underlying problems that I just mentioned. So what we're finding is fascinating is they're looking inward and looking at employee referrals. So really harnessing the power of your current staff as your greatest recruiters. The data is pretty clear, and I'm sure you've just seen this in your own career, Aaron, that many caregivers, guess what? They also have many other caregivers that are family and friends. It's just one of those jobs where you tend to have birds of a feather flock together type of thing. But where employers drop the ball is having a program or technology in place that really unlocks the potential of employee referrals. So as the applicant well dried up, we saw a lot of agencies, customers of ours and not customers, start to realize I need to figure out a way to get more out of my current staff that are happy here. And how do I get them to get their friends and family to apply?
Gotcha. So what I'm hearing you say, you got to be fast.
Got to be fast.
And you've got to be a great place to work so that your current employees will tell all of their friends and family.
You got it.
Right?
Yep. Those are two, they're not bulletproof, but if there's two things you can focus on that are going to help you, I would start there.
You shared with me a pretty comprehensive applicant study that Hierology just did. So thank you. And I want to recommend all of the listeners to go and download the study because it had some really fascinating insights. And I think about 20% of the respondents were from the healthcare industry, but it was pretty broad, right? About 6,300 or so people that you surveyed. But it was pretty clear that even those healthcare workers whose positions are primarily known to be in person, because if somebody needs insulin or a medication at a time, you got to be there at that time. You got to be in person. There's little flexibility. You got to be punctual. But even those people are looking for way more flexibility in their work. I think 44% said that greater flexibility would actually keep them in their current role over a higher paying job. And 48% said that they would take a pay cut for the flexibility that they want. So what do you do about flexibility for roles like caregiving that can't happen remotely today?
First, thank you for reading the study and for the plug there. For those listening, it's called The Great Reassessment. You can easily get a copy of that on Hierology's website, hierology.com. And I hope it was a good sleeping aid for you, Aaron, because it does go pretty in depth. So unless you're an HR nerd like me,
or me,
or you too, yeah, obviously.
I hire people.
Yeah, it is a total I don't want to say catch-22, but it is one of these challenges. It's more difficult for agencies than it might be for another business to offer flexibility, because coming out of the pandemic, right now, who doesn't know somebody that now can work from their bed forever if they so choose? Look, it boils where remote work's not possible, and agencies are not the only businesses where that's not in the cards. Hierology works with a lot of retail organizations who also have hourly workforce people, brick and mortar. They need the butts and seats, right? It's a face-to-face interaction job. It boils down to scheduling flexibility. And that is another trend we've seen really this year, is agencies come around to being as transparent as possible about, hey, here are the shifts that we have available. And I think the next step from there is, what can we do to accommodate your needs? Now, that could be with current staff or a prospective applicant, because that could make or break if they choose you or another agency or some other employer. So I think the first thing you can do is just ask the question, Aaron. Like, look, how can I meet you where you are? And in transparency, we don't have all the flexibility in the world, but we're going to do our best to meet your needs. And you just got to play the hand you're dealt. A lot of younger job seekers today really do appreciate that transparency. And so they may decide to work with you, even though you can't offer the same level of flexibility. Maybe they really admired and respected the fact that you were open and honest, which they don't. You're not going to get that necessarily from Starbucks or Target or some other big corporation who can make some flexibility. But you know what I mean? Like, these are small businesses that can, I think, have a frank one-to-one conversation, just be people. And that's refreshing in many cases. So
yeah, a little bit more personal touch.
Yeah.
So maybe things like schedule flexibility. If I have an appointment during the day, I'm not penalized for needing to take off, pick up a sick kid. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Exactly. Flexibility, work-life balance, those kind of buzzwords. It doesn't just mean, you have to give them Saturdays off or they can't work Monday morning. Like, it's not about that. It's just simply meeting these employees where they are, or at least putting up, making an effort. No different than our customers. Like, I'm sure agencies, even historically, have had to bend over backwards to meet their customers where they are. Like, you moved and now you're this far away. Like, okay, like we'll do our best to get somebody out there in the same time, same days. Like, and how we go to market with that message of, we're here to meet your loved ones or your needs. Like, I think you just got to port over that same methodology, even though it sounds crazy, of how we make accommodations and service our customers. Because job seekers today and employees have all the leverage, you got to at least try to make that same effort with them.
Yeah. Kind of treat them like consumers as well, because you're trying to sell them the job.
100%.
This sounds like it could get a little bit complicated keeping track of all the details. Is there anything that technology can do to support the level of flexibility that the new generation of workers is looking for?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because as agency owners, operators, their head is in a million different places all the time, right? And this is one of those parts of the business that can get deprioritized because there's just, frankly, other more pressing things they have to look to. So I think, one, it starts with your employment brand and having the right HR technology partners that ensure you're setting the right expectations during the candidate experience. Oftentimes we get feedback from applicants that there was a asymmetrical, experience where they were told one thing during interviews, but the reality was another. So the transparency has to start from the beginning. Like, what do you say on your career site? If you have one, I hope you do. What do you say on your career site about the flexibility and work-life balance that you offer here at XYZ agency? How do you communicate that in a job description? And then in the interview process, because as much as you're interviewing them today, more than ever, that person's interviewing you all, So having a partner that can help you with maybe creating some of those types of assets is key. And I think it's candidate experience is so clutch and so critical today, because if they're judging you on pay and flexibility. They're also judging you on how seamless was the interview process. Was it frictionless, like ordering something on Amazon? That's where we're at today. I'm sure the biggest agencies in America have seamless processes. Do you? And so for that, it's, does everything flow smoothly from the initial scheduling and the interview through getting hired, getting onboarded, my first shift? So we recommend it looking at whatever HR tools you have. Do they integrate into scheduling platforms like AllviateCare? Similar to Hierology's partnership and integration with AllviateCare. It just really makes for that ideal flow that's going to impress your new hire, so they know that this company has its act together, and it's leaving less, I guess, room for that new person to be skeptical if this was the right place for them to work.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So you need a nice platform that reduces the friction of the entire process, from creating, posting, delivering that content, keeping all the details housed in one place, and then seamlessly getting them into your scheduling software so that they can have their first shift.
Right. And we're always talking about outcomes with our customers and the patients. Like, what is the promise we made to them in our advertising, and then through whatever consultations we had with the family and the patient themselves, all the way through, and here's what we delivered. And, that all is hugely impactful on the outcomes across, every healthcare business, right, with reimbursements. And it's the same concept here. Like, were you honest up front? Did you put it down, put pen to paper in a compelling way? Because it's going to stick with applicants, especially the good ones. They're the ones that really care, and they're going to read the details.
Home Healthcare News and AllviateCare teamed up in July of this year to do a survey and a webinar about retention and recruitment of home care professionals. 47% of respondents cited pay and benefits as the number one reason for employee churn. Sava Burhani, our SVP of Customer Success, highlighted in her presentation that caregivers are getting paid the same as what they would make in just any regular department store, like Walmart. The context here, and her point was, caregiving work is so much more demanding and so much more complicated than what you would do at Walmart. So there's no wonder why they want more money for their time. Their time is valuable. But from your study, I learned that 44% of applicants prioritize salary when they're doing their searches. But I imagine that paying more is not an option for many of these agencies who are experiencing much lower reimbursement rates these days. Now, let's not even talk about 2023. Anyway, do you have any thoughts on how we can overcome this math problem?
Oh boy, this is the money question right here. Look, we absolutely appreciate that the economics oftentimes just don't pencil for agencies to offer a higher rate than they already are offering. So in those instances, Aaron, what we advise our customers to focus on is a concept. You hear this not just at Hierology, but across the human capital landscape. It's called emotional salary. So those are non-monetary. It's non-monetary enrichment, and that can shake out to a few things. One, do you offer that better life-work balance and flexibility we touched on a few minutes ago? What type of agency culture or mission are you advocating? That's become a very, very top focus for Gen Z and millennial job seekers, is they want to work at a place that actually the mission and the values resonate and connect with theirs. Very important, unlike any other previous generation. And then the last thing is a career path. And I think a career path oftentimes can be more compelling than compensation. Here's why. If you can successfully paint the picture for this person where they'll be 6 months from now, 12 months from now, maybe 2 years from now, and how you're going to coach them to get them there, both in terms of comp and career development, that might resonate. It probably will resonate with the right person. Not everybody, but the individual. Who doesn't want to hire a caregiver that could actually be with you for a long time and elevate themselves into management, an operations role, something in the back office perhaps? So if you message that properly and you land the right person, that's somebody who may, let's say they may take the job making $13 an hour right now, with the promise and a commitment that in 2 years' time, or however long it's going to take, you'll be making $25 an hour doing this for our business, compared to, yeah, go ahead, take that job at Chick-fil-A that's offering you $17.50 tomorrow. What kind of growth do you have there? You go from chicken nugget cook to cashier, making 25 cents more an hour, maybe. So I think that the devil's in the details always. And it's, for us, the emotional salary, what are you offering non-monetary, and being really crystal clear about it, especially with the career growth, can make all the difference when you can't offer more money at the time of hire.
I also read in Hierology's study that the average applicant applies to at least 16 companies these days, or at least 50% or more of applicants apply to that many companies. So that means any employer out there is competing with 15 others to find that one good caregiver. Beyond what we've already explored, how else can you compete with these other agencies for great talent when you can't necessarily hike their pay?
So this is going to sound contradictory to the data that you just highlighted, but in a separate Hierology survey we conducted, on one question in particular was, what is the top reason that influenced? So it wasn't so much about what are you searching for, it's that's what you just referenced, Aaron. This other survey was about what influenced and ultimately made you decide to go to one employer as opposed to the other if you had multiple offers. And the top reason was a superior candidate experience. In other words, so 67 of the respondents in this one survey said they ultimately decided to go to the company that offered the best hiring and interview process. The one that offered the best pay, benefits, et cetera, those were reasons 3 and 4. I think reason number 2, actually, in that survey might have been career path. Yes, you're always going to have a lot of people that they don't care. It's just about the money. Fine. Maybe we don't want them. Maybe those kind of individuals that are just looking for the highest pay don't fit with our values here at XYZ agency. So I think if you can deliver an exceptional candidate experience that rivals the consumer experience that you offer, that is going to put you in a more competitive position, because candidates want to move quickly. They want to be dazzled. Can I do everything from applying to interviewing on my phone? All that stuff matters today. And many agencies don't really, it's not that they don't get it, but I don't think they hear enough about it that it actually does matter. And it might make somebody's mind up to work for you because you are more easy to work with in the hiring process and you look more professional than the agency that's offering $2 more an hour. But they took forever to respond and they seemed a little disorganized and so on.
We've already touched on that a word of mouth referral from an employee is way more valuable and effective than, say, going to Indeed. I'm going to trust my friend over something that I see on the web, right? And it's personal. But if these programs are not well designed and they're not well published and they're hard to get paid for those referrals, I'm imagining that not a whole lot of employees are going to take advantage of them or even think about it. Have you seen any really creative ways to implement these programs to increase adoption?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing with our own customers using Hierology referrals is they're doing stuff like, so our program is run all through a QR code. So they're putting a QR code on in the break rooms. If there's a home office, they're texting it out to all the caregivers. They're emailing these QR codes out to caregivers. So all you have to do is pull out your phone and then simply, it initiates a chat bot. It's really slick. Then you type in the email or cell phone number of your friend or your family member, and they get a text message, and that initiates a sequence for them to submit their information. Nobody needs to email anyone. There's no faxing, no getting on the phone. So I think that just speaks volumes, like having technology that makes it simple and fun to engage your employees. And the engagement is off the charts because not only everybody likes chatbots. I mean, we use them all the time in our daily lives these days. But they have friends that they want to refer. We see at Hierology, according to our data, 10% of employee referrals are hired compared to 2% or 10% of applicants that are referrals are hired. So, if I give you 100 referrals, 10 of them will be hired. Same number of applicants that came from Indeed, only 2 are hired. So huge difference in terms of the quality of individual from a referral. So that's important for the employer. And then we're seeing more of them leverage technology that helps them run engagement campaigns, not just with past referrals, but past applicants. So somebody that applied a year ago for a caregiver position or maybe an office job didn't get it, or they took another role. We're seeing our customers leverage like text messaging or email campaigns back to those same people, basically re-engaging with them. Hey, we have another opening. We know that you applied in the last year and timing maybe didn't work out or whatever. We'd love to open the conversation back up. That's a crazy effective tactic that more agencies are finding success with, because some people, they realize, oh, the grass wasn't greener at that place that I left for, or I took the other offer. And you have to ask, just simple as that.
That's brilliant. Especially those that you are regrettable churn, right? You didn't really want them to leave. Just tap them on the shoulder. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I think I read that for every one applicant right now, there's at least 2 jobs. So, and I feel that we're still struggling with trying to find that pipeline. So diversifying where you're finding all of your applicants is probably important. So you're going to have to use some of those Indeeds or mycnajobs.com, right? So my question for you, if I'm an employer, I know that I'm competing with 15 other employers or more just to get that one great caregiver. So I feel like it's really important to get that job advertisement right. Is there anything special that I can do with a job description if I'm going to use those online platforms to make them stand out and highlight some of those things we've been talking about, the emotional part of it and the career path?
Sure can. And we say every job description needs to over-index, and in other words, focus on the qualities you're looking for in this individual, not the experience. Way too many job descriptions you see on the job boards, it just goes right into this position does X, Y, Z, and this is how much you're going to work, like, and it reports to so-and-so. Okay. All right. Now you've lost me in just the whole mix of thousands and thousands of other postings. So if you focus on the qualities of an individual you're looking for, odds are it's going to cast a wider net. Caregiver experience is great, but it shouldn't be absolutely mission critical. You should be asking, are you empathetic, compassionate, service oriented, things like adjectives like that you want to see in this person. That's what somebody's looking for in a job description out the gate. Also, if you can back that right up with the why work here. Some of the best job descriptions we see in the market, they talk about the job duties and responsibilities or experience required last, almost like it's an afterthought. Because this is an advertisement, no ads lead with the most boring part. Like, Coke doesn't run a TV ad leading with, are you looking for a sugar-filled caffeinated beverage? No. They're like, it's all the fluff of here's how great you're going to feel and you're going to look when you drink a Coke. Job description has to be the same way. So this is like, got to be an ad. This is how awesome it is to work here. And we're looking for people like you. Do you fit the bill? Are you caring and empathetic and a curious person? Whatever. Like, oh, by the way, we offer caregiving services to, elderly, senior citizens. Like, that's legitimately how these job descriptions should read if you want to stand out.
Mm-hmm. So the emotional component, just like an advertisement.
Correct.
That makes sense because, we don't buy anything unless we're emotional about it. Like it's the feeling that we buy.
Exactly.
So it makes sense that we wouldn't buy into a job or an employer if we didn't feel good about being there.
Yeah, and caregiver agencies have a real, I think, advantage here and a strong card to play because it does tap into someone's, emotional, their level of empathy, right, and connectedness. And if you're someone who has a lot of empathy and a desire to serve others, this could be a great opportunity for you. You just have to couch it in those terms and maybe not take away some of the aspects of the job that aren't as glamorous, but really just hammer on those points of, hey, this job may, even though we know it's not going to pay as much, if this is what you get what you get gratification out of in life, this might be for you. Helping somebody make their day by simply folding their clothes, help someone who can't help themselves. Like that kind of stuff resonates again with the right audience.
So you're going to start helping write job descriptions then, aren't you? Because you did a wonderful job just there.
Thank you. Yeah. I'll maybe create a side hustle. Well, in all candor, that's something that Hireology does for our customers.
Okay.
Not only will our product help post the job descriptions, but it's something that's always been in our wheelhouse with helping customers understand like what are the best practices there. Because I'm glad you asked the question. A job description, sometimes people think is just like, I just need to get this posted, but it's really important to spend time and then you can follow a formula. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time, but you find one that you like and you start to see works, you can duplicate that across other openings.
Right. That's brilliant. I want to take it in a different direction because I've read and I've talked to a lot of agencies who are complaining, and maybe it's because their job descriptions aren't what they should be, but
it might be. Yeah.
Might be.
It's time to do some introspection on those job descriptions.
Could be. But the complaint these days is they're being ghosted. They're being ghosted in the application process or the onboarding process, maybe because it's taking too long from that point of application to point of hire for some reason. But what can agencies do to still go through the proper screening, but not drag that out so that people will become disinterested or they get scooped up by another employer?
It's a tough, you got to toe the line, right? Especially with hiring these kinds of positions. You can't just put anybody on payroll. So you got to find that balance, strike that balance of quality, not sacrifice quality for speed. Because it's easy to do that. You can hire someone real quickly, but they may not be the best. One of the key features we're seeing our customers use and other agencies just across the industry adopt is texting. So to move the process along, instead of emailing and calling and leaving a voicemail, we found that just communicating everything through text, schedule the next interview. Hey, can you take this assessment? Or, hey, we need this document like your driver's license, whatever it is, just text it to us. That can increase your speed to hire by 2 days or more because everybody likes texting today. I think the typical Gen Z that's like 22 years old, if somebody calls them, they like freak out. So remember,
rude, right?
Why are you calling if you're an agency, I joke around when I'm on the traveling, giving presentations. Like if you're an agency owner, operator, manager with kids that are teenagers or in their 20s, just think about how often they call you. They're like, "Mom, just text me." You have to do that if you want to get quick responses. And then with ghosting, look, that it just really sucks. Part of my French, but it does, and we have no silver bullet to curb that. But what we've found helps mitigate it a little bit is through texting. So if you have an interview tomorrow, if you email that person confirming the interview, you send an email reminder, it just goes right to maybe the spam email folder. But if you text them, they at least may be upfront with you like, hey, I found another offer I'm more interested in. Thanks, bye. So then it gives you a shot of not wasting 30 minutes waiting for somebody to come on or come in for an interview.
That's really good advice. I think there's also a sort of a cohort of caregivers that don't even have email addresses. I know that's sometimes a challenge for employers. So definitely like the idea of starting to use text way more in that process. We've talked about recruitment a lot, but I'd like to ask you at least one question about retention. Caregiving, nobody is going to deny that it's a really hard job. You're taking care of people, you're taking care of their space. They're not always appreciative. Sometimes they're combative, and caregivers do get burnout. So do you have any tips, tricks, ideas for employers to help prevent that burnout?
I do have a few.
Okay.
It's unavoidable, especially with what we're faced today. With most agencies are understaffed, more demand than ever. Like we hear about agencies turning business away in some cases, and that's tough, and we want to do everything we can to help them make business, right? Be a better business, operate more profitably. So a few tips. One, this is not like me speaking as a Hierology representative and talking about technology. It's be aware. I think is first and foremost. Like make sure your people know that you hear them, you see them. I think a lot of times it's just, you have to read the tea leaves because they may not feel comfortable telling you how they feel. Some employees do, but I think we all know that a lot of our employees keep things to themselves. So make sure they know that you empathize and understand that they're feeling like that level of burnout. The next step is you've got, like, kind of like how we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, you got to make accommodations, or at least like create the perception that you're making that effort. So what are you doing to implement real solutions, or at least like you're trying to figure out what a solution might be? So one example, we do this here at Hierology, no questions asked mental health days. It's not PTO. Well, I mean, it technically can be considered PTO. Talk to your lawyer. But a mental health day is simply someone just needs a break. And I'm not going to ask questions. Where are you going? Is this a vacation? Are you sick? Like, you know what? You need a day, and we can get the coverage. Or like someone who can step up. You got it. Access to counseling. Providing these other perks that maybe you've thought about in the past, but didn't feel like were really necessary because you have your health insurance, you have your medical and dental, and a 401k. What else could they need? Well, again, job seekers' expectations have evolved, and many of them would rather have maybe access to go see a therapist or some other type of like health and well-being perk. There's a variety of providers out there that you can easily Google and see what kind of solutions they have. Employee recognition can curb turn burnout a little bit. Who doesn't love feeling valued? I talk about, even with my own team, there's a difference between when you feel pressure versus stressed. I think people feel pressure to perform in a job when they do feel valued and they value the work. You feel stressed and you start to feel burnt out when those other things aren't true. You know what I mean? So the more that you can recognize folks that are doing good work on staff and speak up, even if you feel like it's totally, like it's fluff and it's something really silly, just say it. And there's tons of great examples of agencies out there doing stuff today. Daily huddles, email shout outs. I mean, shoot, there's even new technologies that have come out in the last couple of years that are purely designed for employee recognition and rewards. So I would encourage agencies to look there. And then the last piece is, for the topic of the day, doing your absolute best to improve and strengthen your hiring and recruiting process. Having a full staff is arguably the only tried and true way to avoid burnout. People are going to get burnt out if they're working longer hours. They don't have as much control over their scheduling if there's fewer people. So just doing your due diligence to make sure you have open roles filled. And I don't know why, but still to this day, Aaron, we have agencies tell us that, well, I don't need to hire anybody right now. I'm good. So I'm going to cancel my subscription, or I'm not going to post anything to Indeed. That's not the right approach. You got to always be recruiting, always have a bench, utilize re-engaging past applicants, even if you're full for talent. Like, it's just always so important that you're keeping that bench fresh, because you never know when you're going to drop somebody. And, thinking about it, that it's not just about building your bench, but you're doing something that's going to help potentially alleviate burnout. That might make a difference in someone's eyes.
I think that's a really important point. If you don't have enough staff, they are going to get burnout. And then you can't have that flexibility that we've talked about that's so important, because you can't afford to let them take that mental health day. So really great points that you just made there, for sure. So I know we are approaching the end of our time, but before we wrap it up, do you have any final comments on industry challenges around recruitment and retention that we haven't talked about yet?
We covered a lot of ground today.
It's good.
I would say the last thing to note is, for any employer out there, just embrace the fact that times have changed. Expectations have changed. The more we just kind of like dig in and say, well, this isn't how it was when I applied, right? And it wasn't this way several years ago. You're just going to keep putting yourself further and further at a disadvantage. So the more employers step up to the plate and realize get in tune with today's job seeker and the things we talked about, Aaron, that's what's going to help propel them forward and staying competitive. And sure, it's a bitter pill to swallow at first, to roll out the red carpet for these caregivers. 15 years ago, the caregiver industry was radically different in terms of what our customers expected from us. And I think, everybody just took it on the chin back then. And now, business has been much better and it's bigger than ever before. So I think we have to, learn those lessons from the past and how we've had to evolve and change as an industry, and port that over to how we now treat and interact with our applicants. If you can do nothing, certainly, but I wouldn't expect anybody to be successful long-term by just continuing to dig in and do what you've been doing. It's not only going to get work, but you're just going to get lapped by the competition, both from within your industry and outside. So the sooner you can just embrace it, and change is hard, but you'll be better off in the long run.
Yeah, people don't like the change, or people like the change. They just don't like the transition. So good words of advice. Just hang in there and do it anyway. Do that thing that's
and take it one step at a time. Right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One bite.
So coming out of today, if you're like, wow, this is great content, this is overwhelming, like I have a headache, start with one thing. Maybe it's just evaluating your job descriptions and how do those read, and try to punch them up and fall in line with some of the best practices we shared. Or it's looking at your career site or evaluating the flexibility you can offer. Don't try to fix everything at once, I think is also really, really important here.
Absolutely. So to wrap us up today, I don't want to fail to mention that Hierology is offering our listeners 15% off of the Essentials and the Pro packages. I'm curious, do you have any additional details you want to share about what's included in these packages?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So those are our two most popular packages with our home care customer base. It'll get you a lot of the things we covered today on the Essentials piece, which is developing an employment brand, Aaron, having that career site and the job distribution to a bunch of different job boards, not just one, plus the tools to move the process along quickly and stay organized, et cetera. And then the other package, Pro, will include a lot of these employee referral program technologies and re-engagement of past applicants that we discussed. So both two really impactful solutions. We're really pleased to offer it at that 15% discount for anybody interested. You can reach out to me personally. I'll make sure you get in touch with the right rep. My email is mcSherry@hierology.com. Of course, feel free to connect through our friends at AlliciCare, and they'll put you in touch with us. The only other thing I'd plug here is that Hierology has its annual user conference coming up next month in October. For anyone interested, it's in person in Chicago. There also will be a virtual attendance option. So it's called Elevate. This is the 5th year running now. We've done it. Check out more details at hierology.com/elevate. If you found today's conversation useful, this will be almost an entire day of conversations just like it from folks in your industry and also other industries on what they're doing to combat the current labor market challenges. So I hope you can make it to that.
That's exciting. So if you are interested in what you heard today, or if you have this deer in the headlights look because you don't know where to start, we have a solution for you with our wonderful partners at Hireology. Thank you so much, Mike, for spending some time with us today and sharing your wisdom. And I'm just excited that there's so many actionable insights that people can come away with today. And just thank you so much for your time.
You bet, Aaron. Let's do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Home Health 360 is presented by AlliciCare. First off, I want to thank our amazing guests and listeners. To get more episodes, you can go to allicare.com/Home Health 360. That's spelled Home Health 360, or search Home Health 360 on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. The easiest way to stay up to date on our new shows is to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a newsletter you can sign up for on allicare.com/Home Health 360 to get alerts for new shows and more valuable content from AlliciCare right into your inbox. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.